Hey everybody, Andrew Reynolds, creator of Fuels, here to personally walk you through your results and what they're intended to help you see. Now this is for any result that's over the top 5 free version. So if this means you've paid to see a little bit more about yourself, you're investing in yourself, and we want to make sure you're well rewarded for that. So if you have the career version, you'll notice that everything but these large boxes, what we call your top 5, is grayed out. That's on purpose to not overwhelm you, but the information here is still valid. In fact, it might make you more excited to upgrade your results to the pro level and above so you can start to see some of this. So first thing we want to walk you through, as your reference guide does, is through the columns. And to understand the columns, there's something called the work cycle, which I'll explain in just a second, but just to break it down as simply as possible, here's a way for you to think about this. This test is here to be an inventory of your best talents, of the values you have to bring. So that before, especially if you're a student, before you go to college, before you get your very first work experience, you need to know exactly how much value you're already bringing to the working world. So that's what these columns are really here to represent. We went through all the different traits, spoke to people and business owners about where they see these traits adding the most value, and that's what gave them their natural home. So really, when it comes to terms of adding value, I've got 4 quick questions for you. Can you imagine someone can you imagine someone making money off or saving money from you either adding value through seeing opportunities and avoiding mistakes, through building relationships quickly and strongly? Can you motivate others? Can you get others to do things? Could that make somebody money? And of course, can you add value through getting things done? Answer is yes to all those. So as you see your results, even by the columns, we're already reflecting back to you the amount of value in specific areas that you're very likely to be able to bring. And it does go in that order. So first column here, planning, reflecting. These are all about the situations where you can add value through seeing opportunities and avoiding mistakes. If you're even just aware of different products and services out there that decision makers are unaware of, you're adding value through that knowledge. Or perhaps on a more cautionary side, you know the pitfalls that are ahead. Maybe you've been in this terrain before. Helping people avoid mistakes, of course, makes people money. The second column here is all about adding value through strong, enduring, and often quick catching relationships where you're able to be known, liked, and trusted with really relative little effort and a lot of impact there, that you're able to do so little work to get so much relationship from people. So even if the product is a half hour late or there's something a tiny bit wrong, it's even likely to be unaddressed because people just know you, like you, trust you, to be like, that's all right, I like Jenny, I won't even bring it up. That comes from that relational capital that can make people money and save people money through that strength of relationship. Hopefully makes sense? Sure it does. Third column here is relegated to kind of pushing from the outside, whereas this column really builds in that relational capital inside. This is the column that's more likely to spend it. And I think we can all agree that whether it's the trainer at the gym or the salesman at the shopping center or even the car lot, sometimes we do like a little bit of extra push. Or maybe we even reach out to friends to say, I'm between this and this, can you push me in a direction? Many times we need that push from the outside. That's what leaders do, that's what managers do, that's what salespeople do, but we wanted to boil it down to its most basic level, which is kind of impetus from the outside, motivating. So if you have strength in this column, you probably know where others don't really understand to say, those leaders or managers or salespeople, who needs them? But if you're strong in that column, you're likely saying, wait, I think that adds a lot of value. I've seen others around me helped by my little pushes, sometimes strong pushes. But if you lead well, then people are benefited. Last column here is, of course, relegated to getting things done. The traits that you'll see in this column are things that you probably very regularly put to use when it comes to accomplishing tasks or getting work done, getting something started, finishing something up is kind of your forte. And just to let you know, for these columns, hopefully you're already starting to see a pretty strong reflection of yourself. The average, we say, is roughly about 12.5. And that's just kind of all things considered. If someone had a truly equal level result there, breaking 50 hours up into 2 sections would be 25. Breaking those sections up into 2 sections to create 4 would be 12.5. And it has really turned out to be a pretty good metric for people to say, you know what, for Jane Doe here, when it comes to her ability to influence, it's just a hair under average, which probably gets her through quite a bit of situations. Whereas when it comes to her ability to be known, liked, and trusted to a strong level with very short time frame, she's a little bit above average there. She's got, you know, 3.5 hours she could dedicate on a daily work week basis to be able to build those strong relationships. And if her workplace is not leveraging that talent, then really everybody's losing. She's not able to add that value of being known, liked, and trusted to build up the business's relational bucks, you know, to the capacity that she can. And she might feel a little bit underutilized if she's not able to put that to work. So first thing is columns. Being able to see opportunities and avoid mistakes, build strong relationships quickly, get people moving or get things done. How does that respond to you? And if you want to take a moment here, you know, with 12.5 being average and everything above average, below average, maybe this is a good time to stop and think, reflect personally to say, you know what, would I say that about myself? If I were Jane, would I say, am I pretty regularly able to do a lot of things, but I do think I do have a lot of value to add to be able to be known, liked, and trusted with very little effort and build those strong relationships. I think that is a value I can add to the world around me. So if you want to continue on, we're going to start talking about the colors, but I do encourage you, take a moment, pause the video, and just really think and reflect. In terms of these columns, do I really see this as a great value I can add? Okay, so next thing we're going to talk about is the colors, because that's the next natural question people have. We wanted to create a representation kind of hot to cold, rare to common. If you scroll down past the work cycle here, which explains in greater detail what we just spoke about, if you really want to think in terms of beginning a process and ending a process, that's a little bit more into the weeds of things, but that reference is there for your uses. So the next thing we want to talk about is the colors, which is right following after there. So basically, red being kind of rare, but also a maybe less understood talent, blue being more common. It's still roughly only 5% of the population. But we did find it helpful for people when they're going through their results to say, you know what, for Jane here, whenever she's thinking, the way she comes about her decisions, the way she adds value through seeing opportunities and avoiding mistakes, it's more of a rare breed, especially the combination thereof to say, you know what, thinking about connecting the dots and pathfinding through the lens of history, that's a pretty rare combination. You know, especially when it comes to her talent of efficiency, doing things where there's almost no wasted time, no wasted effort, everything's used to its maximum. If Jane doesn't know how rare that is, and she goes into the planning meetings and says, hey guys, I think I've got this great idea, I'm sure you've already all noticed it. Well, if there's not 100 people in the room, actually 200 people, statistically, she needs to know that she could probably go through randomly 198 other people and still very possibly not find another person who cares about that as much as she does. And that's helpful for us to be able to reflect, especially when it comes to her ability to gain trust in relationships. She might experience this where, man, whenever I'm with people and adding that kind of value, it's like everybody gets me. They like being helpful. Everybody likes being helpful, don't they? They care about being fair and making sure equal work is getting equal pay or equal effort is having some kind of good coming from it, wanting to see people rewarded for their efforts. Doesn't everybody? Well, more people do, but still only about 5% of the population. So the colors are an important aspect we wanted to include in the representation of you as well, because if you just see a bunch of traits on a page and you don't know, you're not equipped to know how many people you can find that resonance with to say, hey, guess what? I like this thing. Do you like this thing as well? And you don't expect to go through 95 other people in a room before you find somebody else. How many people are you going to get through before you're discouraged and say, man, maybe it is only me. Am I weird? Is this valuable? The rarities really play a pretty important part. So now that you've already taken a look at your columns to see the values that you add there, reflect upon your colors and say, do they match up with my experience of myself as well? To say, you know what? I do agree that when it comes to the more red and orange traits there, I do have a harder time finding someone who cares about this as much as I do. When it comes to the greens and the blues, maybe that's on the other side of the perspective to say, you know what? I really don't get much pushback when it comes to those things. Because the goal is you being able to set expectations for yourself to say, you know what? Okay, I'm confident this has value, whatever part of the process you're bringing to the table. If it's on the more reds and orange and yellows side, okay, I'm not going to expect everybody to get it. I'm going to approach this as if it might just be me. Where it's more of the greens and blues, maybe you can come at it from a more of a perspective to say, you know what? Hey, everybody, I know you're going to love this as much as I do. Here goes. Being able to set good expectations for how many people are going to love it as much as you do, we found is very helpful. So why don't you, or if you're in a group, take a moment, pause the video. We'll go on to the characteristics next, but this is your opportunity to say, you know what does that rarity mean to me? Do I find that true in my own life, that the more cool and the more calm the colors are, I find myself being accepted, and the more red and rare the colors are, I do find myself having to explain myself. Is your fuels result, once again, a very true representation of what happens when you try to put your values to work? Okay, so we've gone through the columns, we've gone through the colors, now it's time for the characteristics, which means we'll just turn the page one more time. So when it comes to the characteristics, we've already mentioned that they have a specific home where they usually add the most value. It doesn't mean that they can't be useful in other areas. We wanted to focus on the areas where these traits really have their most natural home when it comes to adding value. So we list those kind of top to bottom in their own categories, and we found a very useful way of looking at these things, not just putting them there and letting them sit, not even randomizing the order. We found it very useful in planning and reflecting with the person, helping them come up with a plan to put their values to the best use in their working and team environments, to put them in categories not just ranked 1 through 12 or 1 through 15, but to look at them in rough chunks of priority. That instead of asking the person, are you going to fight over, is this second place or fourth place or really third place, we found it was as useful as it could be to just kind of talk in terms of top 5, mid 5, and low 5. So if you have your executive results, you can go to page 2 and see the full list of your priorities, top to bottom. But for most people, we found it most useful just to talk in terms of these 5. So top 5, you'll notice, is double-spaced and bold. These is your first kind of initial mix, your cocktail, your flavor of what makes you a you. And if you also have ordered the top 5 single page, you'll see a picture representation of kind of your top 5. So if honor is really important to you, maybe it's the picture of a handshake, or maybe if it's efficiency, you got a picture of someone in front of some solar panels, that they just want to live in a world where even the world around them, the energy around them, is being harnessed and maximized. You know, that's intended so that you can, even passing by someone's cubicle or workspace, see what's important to them and call out that greatness on behalf of your team. So that's where your top 5 come in. They're your main drivers of performance. They're the main filter that you take in the world. And since that's a bigger part of your daily life, we gave them a bigger spot on the results, gave them more time per week that you can likely add value to the team through. So that's kind of your 1 through 5 there, your top 5. And in terms of perspective, it's kind of interesting when you even see a scientific representation of human sight, that there's almost a third that you can see with crispness, detail, and depth, that when you get out to that second third, to the 2/3 column there, a little bit out of your line of sight, you can still see with a little bit of shape, a little bit of distinction, a little bit of depth, but it becomes a little bit less clear, of course. That's kind of how your mid-5 work, that they're ranked 6 to 10 on your order of priorities. And you know what, when push comes to shove, they're probably talents that you can put to use, but you also have those first 5 priorities where you're likely going to want to prioritize. You'd rather be doing those kind of things. So especially when it comes to your top 10, anything that's in bold, they're probably something that you can rely on a pretty regular basis. So your mid 5 are just that 6 to 10 there that you can probably expect some strength in, and it's important to create that distinction between them and, of course, your low 5, which is the 11 through 15. To say, you know what, in terms of field of vision, maybe that last third there, you can look up in most biology textbooks that, you know what, I can kind of detect a little bit of motion here when it's outside my periphery, but I really can't tell what's exactly going on. A lot of times that's very much related to your low 5. Like, for instance, when it comes to connecting the dots, Jane is a master at that, and she can build so much mastery mastery and value by just being able to see the connections between things. That's very rough and ready when it comes to her value to the team. Something like pathfinding, charting a course from start to finish, maybe she can do it every once in a while and still add some value, but when it comes to being factual, when it comes to being direct and saying black and white, this is or it isn't, she might not be as passionate about it. She might not even want to use it on a daily basis. Maybe it's just something that's kind of in her talent periphery. And that's why we label things in regards to top 5, mid 5, and low 5. Top 5 double spaced in bold, mid 5 single spaced in bold, and low 5 just kind of italicized there. Also on the bottom of your chart, you'll notice something that says to seek partnership. Let me get back up there, my apologies. These are the areas that are on the bottom 3 of your report. These are the things that you very likely you of course could improve upon, but the real mastery is not built in building up your weaknesses as much as it is finding a team member who can fill those things in for you. So those are important for you as well to really consider and really just come down to brass tacks with yourself and be honest and say, you know what? These areas might even be embarrassing. These are areas where if there's nobody else that can help me, I'm probably very likely to be embarrassed. If this is my sole responsibility and it's up to me to attack these kinds of challenges, like for Jane when it comes to repair, those really difficult challenges that are near impossible, and anyone around her expecting her to say, come on Jane, let's win one for the Gipper, let's put our nose to the grindstone, pedal to the metal, and she's just dying inside. That'd be much better if she could see those things coming and say, you know what? I've got a teammate that can help me with that, because I know when it comes to overly difficult situations, I want to be a team player, and the best way I can be a team player is to see those things coming ahead of time and plan for those contingencies by making sure whenever I need the Hulk who just needs to smash, I'm just going to push that button, get a big green light up in the sky. Kind of like that. So now's the time where you could pause and reflect to say, you know what, when it comes to those top 5 double spaced and bold, when it comes to those mid 5 single spaced and bold, when it comes to those more italicized light ones, is this a good reflection? And before you do that, I want to just really bring this kind of idea of growing and shrinking to your attention. A lot of people have found this very helpful. That when it comes to stressful moments, when it comes to times where you're highly engaged, low stress, you'll probably see all of your talents at play. You'll be very satisfied in your work week. You'll be creative and contributing, and all things will be well. If things get a little bit more stressed, now we basically assume that your low 5 are now no longer available. Like for Jane, she had all this great relational talent. Now it's pretty roughly even across the board, because now she's about mid-level stressed and mid-level engagement. There's still a lot of Jane to go around, but it's getting a little bit worse. So now for low engagement, high stress, our assumption is in these times when you're really just surviving, just like a survival expert would tell you, if you're out in the cold, try to protect your core. That's where your vital organs are. It's amazing how much of our motivational aspect mirrors our physical self as well. Interesting thing of life, but regardless, this is where we think of low engagement, high stress, where there's not much around you that you're getting a lot of resourcefulness from, and you're in a pretty stressful environment. You're probably desperately, like Jane would be desperately looking for any way she can add value through keeping promises, doing things more efficiently, and kind of connecting the dots. She might really be at her wit's end and trying to focus on and it might seem childish in the moment when she really doesn't want to help out in different areas, but for her case, she's probably trying to survive. It's like driving on a long highway just looking for some forgotten gas station where she can just fill up and do what she needs to do, because she feels her own motivational tank getting towards empty. And many times we can even, knowing these things about ourselves, be more strategic to say, if I know I'm going to be in a low engagement, high stress environment, I need to know where I can gain the most resource in the most efficient manner. I'll be honest with you, there's times where I even plan out after an hour of difficult work, maybe I'll give myself 10 minutes to just play a video game or a strategy game, something I know is just kind of a very specific, very potent break for myself. Since I like pathfinding, I like connecting the dots, strategy games offer me the chance to just kind of recharge. It's like a quick recharge for your laptop or device. If you've got those charging stations where you can leave it on the station for 15 minutes and fill your battery, is that not a very adult thing to do, for you to know the places you can go to recharge the quickest, especially if you're on kind of a long track where you just got to get to the other end of that desert. You better know where those oasis moments are. And that is truly how you're going to get across that desert and be able to contribute to your team. It's good to be able to know these things. So sorry for that quick little addition. We talked about the columns, the colors, and the characteristics. Now's the time for you to reflect and say, you know what, when it comes down to even how these things I prioritized, and you're welcome to go through your reference guide to see a full list of all the different talents that we're assessing for, the traits that we inventory, and then you can go alphabetical through that to find the things that matter to you. So now's the time for you to really hone in on your characteristics. We know what the columns mean, we know what the colors mean. Now we can look at the characteristics in light of those priorities and say, you know what, if I'm really high in efficiency, I'll just go down to E, read that through and reflect for myself to say, you know what, do I really see this as a priority? Is this a very strong charging station, a very good milestone oasis for me to recharge and come at the challenges with full force and creativity and energy and enthusiasm? So that's, I hope, helpful for you. Now's the time where you can reflect upon those things, and hopefully you're just in this little milestone yourself before you're able to meet with your fuels advisor and get assistance in really seeing how these details matter to your everyday life. So this is something that everyone can learn from. Everybody can use information on their columns, their colors, and their characteristics. We look forward to speaking with you soon to help you really absorb this information as quickly and efficiently as possible so you can not only start bringing your best that you have to give to the world and your team around you, but you're set up for success with a path with many different charging stations, maybe even a few little metaphorical solar panels for yourself, that even as you walk along your job, the environment itself is giving you that residual energy to go out and serve again. Thanks so much. Hope this has been informative, and we look forward to talking with you soon.